Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a universal frustration that literally every single one of us has experienced at some point. You know the drill, right? You sit down, you focus, and you spend hours, just hours, studying a complex topic. You read the material, you highlight the text, usually until the whole textbook is basically glowing in the dark, and you're nodding along, feeling like you completely grasp the concepts. But then, a few days later, or honestly, sometimes even just a few hours later, you try to recall that information and it is completely gone. Poof, vanished. It's incredibly demoralizing to put in that much effort only to completely forget the lesson later. But what if the problem isn't your memory at all? What if the problem is actually just the mechanics of how you're studying? So let me ask you right up front. Want to remember your lessons longer? Are you ready to finally fix this retention problem once and for all? Because today, we're pulling a really brilliant, highly effective concept straight from the source material, the pedagogy of retention. We're going to look at exactly how you can completely transform your study habits, stop wasting your time, and lock information into your brain for the long haul. Okay, let's dive into this. The overarching solution to your study woes is a massive paradigm shift: the Teach to Learn method. The source defines this as a strategy for long-term retention where the student acts as the educator. So instead of just passively absorbing information like a sponge, you're completely flipping the script. You are taking on the role of the person who has to actually deliver the information. It sounds simple, right? But as you'll see, the mechanics behind this shift are absolutely powerful. Section 1. Pretend to teach. Act as the educator. To pull this off and become a truly great student, you actually have to stop acting like one. You have to take off your student hat, step up to the imaginary whiteboard, and start role-playing as a teacher instead. You're no longer the consumer of the information, you're the provider. And here are the exact physical actions required to make this method work. Step 1, study the topic. You still have to do the initial reading, of course. Step 2, pretend you're the teacher. Step 3, explain the topic out loud. And Step 4, use simple words. Now, I want to heavily emphasize steps 3 and 4 here. You literally cannot just think about the topics silently in your head. You must speak out loud. Your mouth physically needs to form the words, projecting them into the room to an imaginary classroom. And just as importantly, you have to use simple words. If you find yourself relying on complex jargon, well, it usually means you're kind of hiding behind fancy vocabulary because you don't fully understand the core concept yet. Simple words prove true understanding. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Section 2. Finding your blind spots. Let's be totally honest here. When you first try to stand up and explain a fresh topic out loud using simple words, you're inevitably going to mess up. You're going to hit a wall. Normally, getting stuck triggers deep frustration. You lose your train of thought, you stutter, and you just feel like you failed. But the Teach to Learn method beautifully reframes this entirely. You haven't failed. You've simply triggered a highly sensitive, built-in diagnostic tool. Getting stuck isolates the exact missing puzzle piece in your comprehension. You've just found exactly what you don't understand yet. And the absolute second you find that gap in your understanding, you have an immediate, targeted action to take. Go back and review that specific section. Think about the relief in that. You don't need to reread the entire chapter. You don't need to start from scratch. You know exactly where your lecture fell apart, so you surgically review that one specific gap, plug the hole in your knowledge, and then start teaching it again. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point, Section 3, the brain's organization process. This isn't just a neat little study trick. There is a massive psychological payoff here. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how your mind processes data. The source captures this with a brilliant revelation. Teaching forces your brain to organize information. Think about the sheer weight of that statement. When you just read a textbook, the information is sort of floating around loosely in your mind. But the sheer act of having to formulate a lesson, find the right simple words, and speak them chronologically out loud physically forces your brain to structure and organize that data. You're actively building mental scaffolding. You are connecting the dots in real time. That forced mental organization, that is the secret engine powering this entire framework. That is exactly why this method works so exceptionally well. It is genuinely impossible to successfully teach a subject, even to an empty room, if your brain hasn't properly organized the underlying information. By demanding that you teach it, you are demanding that your brain files the information efficiently for long-term storage. So the crucial point is coming up right here in Section 4, the final mantra. You really don't need a complicated diagram to easily carry this entire philosophy into your very next study session. You just need this simple rhythm to guarantee long-term retention. First, learn it. Put in the initial work to read and comprehend. Second, teach it. Stand up, speak out loud, use simple words, and find those blind spots. Third, remember it. Because your brain was forced to organize the material to teach it, the retention essentially takes care of itself. Learn it, teach it, remember it. You now possess the blueprint for locking in complex information. You understand that the friction of explaining something out loud is exactly what builds the memory. So I'm going to leave you with this one final question as we wrap up this explainer. Look at the material sitting on your desk right now. What are you going to teach today?